Wow. This story is just so disturbing. We're going to be taking a deep dive into this case in South Africa. A man confessed to murdering his ex-girlfriend on social media,
Yeah,
and then he took his own life.
it's really heavy stuff.
It is. And we're going to be looking at two articles today from ENCA that were published on December 18th, 2024.
Okay.
And just a heads up, the editor put a warning on this content saying it was graphic. So yeah, get ready.
All right.
So this case, it really highlights the impact of gender-based violence, GBV,
Yeah.
especially in South Africa. But also, I think this really brings up how social media is changing the landscape of crime and confession and justice.
For sure. So this man was identified as Sibusiso Lawrence,
Okay.
and he seems to have posted a video online confessing to killing his ex-girlfriend.
Right. And it happened in KwaZulu-Natal.
Yeah, and you know what's really unsettling is that he tries to justify what he did
Yeah?
in this video. He's like blaming the relationship and saying that she mistreated him.
Almost like he's trying to shift the blame away from himself.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Almost as if, like, by blaming her, it somehow makes the murder acceptable,
Right.
which obviously it doesn't.
No, not at all. And it really makes you wonder, was this always part of his plan? Like this public confession, this attempt to control the narrative?
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
I think we see that a lot with perpetrators of GBV.
Mm,
They try to downplay what they did or shift the blame to the victim.
right.
And it's all about maintaining power and control.
Power and control, even when they've committed this horrible act of violence.
Yeah, and you're right. Using social media, a public platform, to do that just adds a whole other level of complexity.
Yeah, it's disturbing. And the articles mentioned that this video went viral.
Yeah, and that's where the South African police's 72-hour activation plan came into play. It's a special strategy they use for really high-profile or violent cases.
Okay.
It basically means that they throw everything they've got at finding this suspect.
So social media going viral actually triggered this massive law enforcement response. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of public outcry.
Yeah.
And even government officials were tweeting about it, like Sendabashunu.
Right?
And ENCA actually retweeted his post, which had a picture of Lawrence after he had committed suicide.
Oh, wow.
It shows how powerful social media can be.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, you can raise awareness and force the authorities to act quickly.
But at the same time, like we said before, social media has a dark side.
For sure.
You know, the potential for harm.
Definitely.
Sharing that graphic content can re-traumatize victims and might even inspire copycat behavior.
Right.
And in this case, it even maybe contributed to Lawrence's decision to take his own life before the police could even get to him.
That's definitely something to think about. While social media helped raise awareness about the crime and triggered this 72-hour activation plan, it also became a part of this tragic story.
It did. And to complicate things even more, Colonel Robert Netshiunda, he's the police spokesperson for KwaZulu-Natal. He said in the article that he really regretted that Lawrence wouldn't face trial. They wanted him to have to answer for what he did, explain himself. But because he committed suicide, that's not going to happen.
It speaks to that need for justice, right? Like, we want answers.
Yeah.
We want to understand.
We do.
But unfortunately, in this case, we're not going to get that closure. And it forces us to face the reality that even though the legal system is really important, sometimes it can't provide the closure that we're looking for.
It is heartbreaking, especially when you think about the bigger picture here.
Yeah.
One of the articles uses the term GBV epidemic to describe what's happening in South Africa.
It's a stark reminder that this case isn't isolated. It's part of a much bigger problem. The rates of violence against women in South Africa are really high, and it reflects deeper societal issues that need to be addressed
Yeah, for sure.
and attitudes that need to change.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is a huge problem. When you see headlines like that, GBV epidemic, it's like, wow.
Oh,
But what can we even do about it? How do you even begin to tackle something like that? It's so deeply rooted.
you're right. It's really complex. There's no easy answer, no quick fix.
Right.
But there are things we can do, both individually and as a society.
Like what?
Well, education is key.
Okay.
We need to be teaching young people about healthy relationships, consent, respect, from a young age.
So starting early.
Yeah, and breaking down those harmful stereotypes that contribute to this violence.
Right. It's like changing the whole narrative, moving away from those toxic ideas about masculinity and dominance.
Exactly. And it's not just about educating boys and men.
Right.
It's about empowering women and girls.
To know their worth,
Yeah.
to stand up for themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To recognize their own worth,
Right.
to set boundaries, and to know how to get help if they need it.
Yeah, that's so important. And it makes me think about support systems.
Yeah.
Like, if someone is experiencing abuse, where can they turn? Do they feel safe coming forward?
That's a really important point.
Hmm.
We need to make sure there are safe places for victims to report abuse without feeling judged or scared.
Without feeling like they're going to be punished for speaking out?
Exactly. And we need to provide resources and support services for survivors.
To help them heal, to rebuild their lives.
Exactly.
So that makes sense. But what about the people who commit the abuse? What happens after someone reports it? Does the justice system actually hold them accountable?
That's the big question. And unfortunately, there are often gaps between what the laws say and how they're actually put into practice.
Yeah.
We need to push for stronger laws, more thorough investigations, and faster prosecutions.
To make sure that those who commit these acts are held responsible.
Exactly.
So it's not just about punishment, though, right? It's also about trying to stop it from happening again.
Rehabilitation programs are really important.
Okay.
We need to understand what causes this violence in the first place, and then provide the tools and support to help people change their behavior.
It's a long road, though.
It's a long and challenging process,
Right.
but it's essential if we want to break this cycle of violence.
And this case we're talking about with Sibusiso Lawrence, it kind of brings up all these points, doesn't it?
It does.
The societal norms that fuel GBV, the role of social media, how it can both bring attention to the problem and make it worse. And then the challenges of getting justice for the victim, it's all connected.
It's a harsh reminder that GBV is not a simple issue.
Right.
And that it has huge consequences. And while this particular case is tragic, it can be a wake-up call for us all.
To step up and demand better for our communities.
Exactly.
You know, I keep thinking about the police spokesperson saying how he wished Lawrence had been caught so he could explain his actions.
Yeah.
It's like, even after something so horrible, there's still this desire to understand, to make sense of it all.
It's a natural human response to want to find meaning in tragedy.
Yeah.
But sometimes those answers just aren't there.
Right.
And in those moments when we're faced with the limits of our understanding, it's important to focus on what we can control,
Okay.
like our own actions,
Yeah.
and how we can work towards creating a world where violence is less likely to happen.
That's powerful. It can feel overwhelming, though. Like, what can one person really do when the problem feels so huge?
I get it. It's a common feeling.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that change starts with us.
With individuals, yeah.
Each of us has a role to play, whether it's challenging harmful attitudes, supporting survivors, or pushing for change in the system.
So it's about all of us working together.
Exactly. Our individual actions can create a ripple effect.
Yeah.
And that can lead to real change.
So where do we even go from here? What can people actually do to make a difference?
Well, if you're here in South Africa, there's this organization called People Opposing Women Abuse,
Okay.
or POWA. They offer direct support to survivors of GBV,
So what kind of support?
like counseling, legal aid, safe shelters. And they're always working to change policies and raise awareness about this issue.
That's great.
Yeah, even donating a little bit of money can make a real impact.
And what about people outside of South Africa? What can they do?
There are international organizations like UN Women and the Global Fund for Women. They're working to fight GBV all over the world. You can support them by donating or just spreading the word about the work they do.
It's interesting how social media played such a big role in this case, you know, bringing attention to it, but then also possibly contributing to how it ended.
Right. Like we said, it's a powerful tool, but it can also be dangerous.
It really is.
We all need to be more aware and responsible online.
Yeah.
We can challenge harmful content, promote respectful conversations, and really think about what we're sharing and who it might affect.
Right. Even just choosing not to share graphic content can be a powerful statement.
Exactly. It's like we're all responsible for creating a better online environment.
Yeah. Being mindful of the impact of our words and actions, even in the digital world.
Exactly. And this case is a reminder that the fight against GBV isn't limited to the real world.
It's everywhere.
We need to be working to create a culture of respect and safety, both online and offline.
This has been a really tough deep dive.
It has.
But it's an important conversation to have, you know? It makes us face some uncomfortable truths about the world we live in. And it raises questions about justice and responsibility.
And the influence of social media.
Exactly. And there are no easy answers.
There really aren't. But we hope you leave this conversation feeling like you can make a difference.
Like we all have a role to play.
Each of us can challenge harmful attitudes, support survivors, advocate for change.
It's a fight worth fighting.
It is.
And
And by working together, we can create a world where violence against women isn't an epidemic, but a thing of the past.
thanks for joining us on this deep dive. If this conversation brought up any difficult emotions or memories,
Yeah.
please remember that there are resources available to help. You can talk to a friend, a family member, or reach out to a professional support organization.
You're not alone.
Stay informed, stay engaged, and keep fighting for a better future.
We can do this.